Has WoW lost its magic? The Warcraft feeling is gone. I don't know. I mean, I will say it's definitely different. Dragonflight has been a good expansion, but in terms of story, it does not feel Warcraftian. If that's a real word, it is now. I just made it up. But let's see what Mr. Doran, the truth teller, has
I
to
don't
say.
know about you, but World of Warcraft just doesn't feel like the same game that it was back in the day, and that is sort of natural, but also not really. This is, of course, not a negativity video to just pile on Blizzard, as they're definitely obviously trying quite hard with Dragonflight, the new expansion, and despite all the new features, the more frequent patches, it just feels like that magic aspect is no longer there. I don't really know how to explain it.
Look, I will agree with him on something. Like, you get this feeling like something's off. I do too. Like, because I look at it, sometimes I'm like getting ready to play, or I'm in the game, or I'm just thinking about Warcraft in general, because that's what I do. I've completely lost myself in this game now since I was 15 years old, and I don't think about much else. It's a fucking problem, to be completely honest with you. But I do find myself thinking about WoW lately, and I'm like, man, we've gotten so much content. Dragon riding's awesome. The raids have been good. The expansion aesthetically is pretty nice. Why isn't this expansion like at the top of, in my head in terms of like, wow, this is one of the best expansions ever? I don't know. It's off. There's something off about it. I don't know if it's the dragon tails, let's hold hands and have a dragon orgy together. I don't know if it's that or or something else. But it definitely doesn't feel as Warcrafty as, say, like Legion or even fucking WoD. Like, just comparing storytelling and the expansion and stuff, WoD did. WoD felt more Warcraft than Dragonflight does. And that's not saying WoD is better than Dragonflight. It's just saying, like, storytelling-wise, it felt more Warcraft. Ian, again.
The game has just used all there is to it. After all, the 20th anniversary is coming soon. Is it that we had also just gotten older over time, or has the Warcraft
people don't form
team
proper
just
opinions until
actually
expansions
changed?
are?
Like,
That's
have
true.
we gotten from the orcs versus humans brutal war to a team that no longer really resonates with the audience? Pandaria, for example, was just like Dragonflight.
Can we just agree that Sakureth is a lame end boss? Can we also agree on that? Sakureth is a lame end boss. He's literally just a fucking larger Drakthir. There was nothing great about him. He kind of just got thrown in there.
Brand new content, brand
his
new
story
lore,
was
brand
shit.
new
He just kinda
characters,
showed
but I
up.
feel like they had done
Like, we'll
such
fuck
a
about,
better
that's fine.
job of keeping it Warcraft with the storytelling, something I feel like is kinda missing with Dragonflight. So what are all the factors, and could we be expecting 11.0 to be the expansion that is going to bring WoW back to the glory days? If you guys want to buy Total War, Elder Scrolls, or any other game, you can get them at great prices with
if you're thinking about Warcraft coming to the glory days, one thing that'll certainly help that is the return of the Chosen One, Chris Metzen. Yeah. I do feel like Chris Metzen coming back is going to help us out in terms of coming back to the hardcore war in World of Warcraft.
To start off, I just want to say as a content creator that has been making videos since Mists of Pandaria on YouTube, so for a really long time, we had right now in Dragonflight gotten up to a point where we data mine the actual ending of the expansion, like the finale of the major patch, the culmination of all this build up for the past year and a half, possibly the ending of Whole of Dragonflight, and people just don't really even care to know all that much about it. I mean, when we compare this with Legion, for example, this would be like breaking news, but I feel like this expansion in particular has just gotten a lot of people up to the point where they just don't
that would
really
get people's
care,
blood flowing.
or they sort of mildly care, but they're not particularly invested. There isn't a lot of negativity in Dragonflight because overall it is a pretty good expansion. With Shadowlands there was a lot of bad stuff, so the negativity was even what drew certain people in, as they couldn't believe how ridiculous things have gotten. But I feel like at this point we're experiencing like the real damage that Shadowlands did on World of Warcraft lore. I'm not, of course, just talking about YouTube here. You have definitely noticed the popularity of WoW is at least 50% less than...
Can I say something, with this on the screen right now? I don't know if this is like a controversial opinion at this point, but BFA was not a bad expansion. I really don't think it was. Like, I actually, like, aesthetically, the two factions, you had the Zandalari trolls and the Kultirans and the storytelling that was going on in that expansion. And the raids, Battle for Desire Lore is still one of my favorite raids ever. I love that fucking raid. I love the way they switch sides and all. That was awesome. Azerite armor was shit. And it was a really bad start to the expansion, and I feel like it tainted it. But I don't feel like BFA was a very bad expansion, now looking back. Shadowlands obviously is horrible. I think Shadowlands is worse than WoD. I think Shadowlands goes down as the worst expansion ever. And Dragonflight's good. But I feel like, again, the storytelling, something about it. BFA was more Warcraft than this is. I don't know.
Back in BFA, if not more, so you can see this on Twitch, you can see this on forum activity, and just everywhere Warcraft related. For us that have been really into the lore, I feel like a lot of you can relate with me here, but I feel like I'm just not as excited about the story as I was in the past.
Oh
There's
yeah,
definitely the factor that a lot of story has sort of been ruined, but I feel like WoW lore has just changed overall. It just isn't as gripping as it was in the past. There are of course still some interesting aspects, some interesting things we learn, but I just don't feel like where I would get lost for like 2 hours in the wiki pages like I would back in the days. Before we get into the discussion about Dragonflight, I just want to say that I also think there is a personal factor here as well, and that is definitely for a lot of you too as well. Most WoW players are older now. Most of us started playing this game as kids or teenagers.
That's true.
Experience things a lot differently at that point in life. The world itself has also changed quite drastically. Back in the day before social networks, WoW was like the social network, like this virtual world where you can have your own reality. It was sort of unheard of, but now that concept is kind of everywhere. It is like nothing novel. It is like the norm in today's world. This isn't just a problem with World of Warcraft, but the entire
I remember my parents couldn't understand the concept of World of Warcraft when I first started playing it. Like, they used to tell me, like, why don't you, like, socialize or talk to people or something? I'd be like, little Dad, look at my screen right now. I'd be sitting in the middle of, like, Ironforge, right? The center area between the bank and the auction house. I'd be like, Dad, look at my screen right now. And I'm like, okay, yeah, what am I looking at? I'd be like, look at all these are all real people. These are all real fucking people, Dad. I wouldn't say fucking because he'd beat the shit out of me for that. But these are all real people. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, I'm like, Dad, these are real people. I could talk to them right now, and I could group up with them and go kill a dragon or something. Like, I'm being social, Dad. It's just on a computer. It's just on a computer. He goes, what if you leave the game? What happens to all the people? Like, they keep playing. That's the thing. It's a real world. It just keeps going. He said, that's pretty cool. I told him, yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. He said, I think you should still get out, though. Get off the chair a little bit, you know. So we used to limit things. I was only allowed to play on the weekend and shit like that. But, yeah, it's a father kiss. Yeah, exactly. But my dad, World of Warcraft as a concept, and in terms of MMOs, it really brought MMOs to the mainstream back then. Like, it wasn't a mainstream thing. Only, like, crazy hardcore people played MMOs until WoW came out. And then it was like, oh, there's these games where there's lots of people. It's crazy.
RPG genre.
It was my first MMO.
A big part is also because we've gotten older, we have less free time, the grind just doesn't feel as fulfilling anymore as it did back in the day. However, while this is a factor, I really don't think
my time
this
in
is all
Goldshire
there actually is to it. I mean, sure, WoW is 20 years old, almost. Blizzard just admitted they have used up all their Warcraft 3 materials, so naturally it has to evolve, new things have to be invented, but I still think changes can be done and the ship can kind of be turned around. Let's be real, WoW was in a pretty bad shape, in a pretty bad state in Warlords of Draenor, and then Blizzard pulled an explosion with Legion. Literally, they just revived the game to a significant extent.
But WoD's story was not the problem. WoD's main problem was there was no more content. They just stopped making content for the game during WoD. That was the major issue. Otherwise, WoD was not a problem in general. Like, the storytelling and everything in WoD was fine. Garrisons were an issue in and of themselves because they kind of took the social aspect out of the game, and they also fucked up the economy, like, permanently. We never recovered from WoD's garrison economy, issues. But in terms of storytelling, WoD was pretty cool. I mean, I remember, like, the Harbingers, like, the first, those episodes that they dropped before the expansion, even those were cool, man. And the whole story of WoD, that was fine.
This popularity extended into BFA and was killed by Shadowlands, and now it definitely was not revived by Dragonflight. It was slightly rekindled, but not really to a great extent. Now, don't get me wrong, Dragonflight, by most features, is actually a pretty good expansion overall. It's definitely not Shadowlands, but I feel like it's really lacking on the story aspect in particular. Blizzard is definitely pushing patches like crazy, more so than ever before. We're getting content left and right, a lot of these really cool features all the time. Although, I gotta say, at times I feel like they they might have pulled on us that all of this is a bit of an illusion if 10.2 is really the final patch. We are getting a 2-patch major expansion that is more expensive than all the others. The spreading into mini patches is like essentially the same amount of content, just spread out to appear more frequent, but of course we'll have to wait and see how much content we actually end up getting in the end. However, the biggest problem with Dragonflight, in my opinion, is this overcorrection. We went from this crazy cosmological storyline with this jailer guy to the Isles, where everything is a little bit too idyllic. We are solving problems we never even knew we had. The entire story is essentially just one big, massive build-up for 11.0. Nothing really important is really happening. The Dragon Isles are, in my opinion,
it's true. We're not even going to fight a Ridicron in this expansion. So if you think about it, this whole expansion was just like making everybody friends again so they can fight a Ridicron later. Like, that's literally what we did. We're like the friendship police. We've been walking around saying, hey, guys, you got to be friends. Everyone's got to be friends now because we're going to fight a Ridicron in the next expansion. This is the friend expansion. Yeah, that is kind of what it feels like.
Not really the Dragon Isles that I personally expected. If you remember the original concept, it was this old god place. Dragons are supposed to be these massive, scary creatures. Honestly, I would have imagined this as a pretty scary place. However, here dragons are constantly in their human form. They're more human than dragons. They're constantly
That's true. They are always in their human form.
Compare this, for example, with the Isle of Thunder that honestly felt like a pretty dark, pretty scary place. Honestly, I imagine something like either this or like the Dinosaur Islands with the Zandalari back in the day. I also feel like we're focusing way too much on these emotional storyline scenes. Alexstrasza lamenting about her past, dragons reuniting, Dractyl solving the problems not many people care about. Don't get me wrong, these are all cool storylines, but I really feel like that should be on the back burner. It shouldn't really be the main stuff. The main storyline is literally just constant build-up for the next expansion. The Ridicron stuff is mildly interesting, but the real juicy stuff are the old gods, the Void, Zealotat, and these plans, and it doesn't really feel like this is even a Dragonflight thing. It just feels like this is being set up for the next expansion. A big problem is also that Blizzard has retconned a lot of stuff, so people have kind of lost their trust in with Blizzard, so they're not really taking the lore as serious as they did in the past. Now, you may be saying like Blizzard already exhausted all their material and now they have to build new things, but honestly, I feel like this execution could be done a little bit better. Remember Mists of Pandaria? I mean, sure, it was hated back in the day, but overall, it was a pretty great expansion. It also had a ton of new lore. You could say the same thing about Warcraft 3 lore being exhausted at this point as well. Sure, Pandaren were like a thing in Warcraft 3, but they were literally just one character drinking beer from a keg. It wasn't exactly like enough lore to build an entire continent.
Yeah, they didn't have fleshed out lore. But look, what I will say about Mists of Pandaria, that was the last expansion. Now maybe it has to do with my age. That was the last expansion where like the day it launched, I went so fucking hardcore, and I'll never forget like the leveling experience through Pandaria. I enjoyed it so much. I thought Mists of Pandaria was a good expansion overall. And it got like a bad rap because people thought it was Kung Fu Panda. But it actually goes down as like one of my more favorite expansions. It was like the last one that I actually played, how do you say, like I did Burning Crusade. Like, you know, a degenerate teenager. That's how I felt about Mists.
It still built an entire new race, completely new Manti that felt like a threat, Yashara, Gelation, a great character that was tied in with the Zandalari and some of the older lore. A lot of this new stuff was brand new storyline, but in my opinion, it just kind of had this magic to it that is sort of missing with the Dragon Isles. I definitely feel like Warcraft storytelling has sort of dulled itself. Originally, Warcraft had this mental theme that was really brutal or about war and destruction, and now it has kind of lost that aspect, which I really feel like
such
is
a good comparison.
The series to the popularity that it had gotten to. You can compare this with certain characters returning. I mean, for example, the Taskar.
Like, we had hot chicks back then too, but look at this one. She's literally dodging a giant fucking piece of wood with like spikes in it. He's trying to take her head off. And yeah, she looks hot, but she's dodging for her life. Well, now everyone that looks hot is just, you know, being friends and hugging and stuff.
Compare this with certain characters.
World of Orgy crap.
For example, the Taskar are classic. They had gotten a new story in the Dragon Isles, but to me,
are they going to be playable or not?
I feel like the Warcraft 3 Taskar or the Wrath of the Lich King Taskar. There's just something a little bit different about them. I just can't quite put my finger on it, but they just don't feel like the Taskar from the past. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not just making this video to complain how Dragonflight sucks. I'm not even saying that. I don't think Dragonflight sucks. I actually still feel like they ship for the lore can be turned around. I gotta say, I'm excited about the new Zealot,
Yeah.
Old God, Void teams that could be a potential thing with 11.0. Honestly, with essentially 3 expansions worth of build up, this one
Okay,
could
Boomer.
finally be it, and it should really be it. I don't feel like people are gonna have more patience. Blizzard has also started listening to feedback more. They started pushing more content. They also got Chris Metz back that has literally built
The return
Warcraft
of Metz,
in
and it's
this
gonna be a big
original
one, I
field
think.
that I have been talking about. So I feel like they could actually turn it around with this one. With Shadowlands, I wasn't as optimistic, and there wasn't really any indication of change.
Man, did
but
they puss
here
a
there is
5
obviously a pattern.
What a
Things
letdown
have
he was as
changed
a
at
character.
Blizzard. We learned with Legion that the big revival is possible. Of course, I'm not deluding myself that WoW is going to go back to 12 million players like back in the day, but if they pick the right team, the right storytelling, make the story as gripping as before, it is definitely possible that they could spark a lot of the interest back into this game. Personally, I've talked to a lot of people that wanted to get into WoW that stopped playing a few years back, and they just weren't really drawn in that much by this entire Dragon Isles, this Dragon team. At the moment, the leaks are showing potential. Things are being set up.
This does look more hardcore, right? This league does look more like, you know, it looks like more dark and sinister. I still think this is like one of the gargoyles from Castle Nathria or something, and maybe we're going to get some Dreadlord shit going on, who knows? Dreadlord's taking over the Burning Legion, maybe Dreadlord's talking about releasing the Scourge or something like that, I don't know. But this guy seems like he's related to them, and I don't understand who this is in the background. People think it's Eridicron. I'm still questioning that.
Are being set up right. I just hope that Blizzard can push itself on not just making new features, but also getting WoW lore back to what it was and just recreating that magic feel. Thank you for watching. Check out this Frog mind control by Yogg-Strand by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Slavic pirates and Vikings by also clicking on the screen. See you next time.
Yeah, good video. Look, definitely. Warcraft has taken a bit of I don't know, a poo-poo on the violence a little bit. You know, they've toned it down for sure, and I think they need to turn it back up. And part of turning it back up is bringing Chris Metzen back. So at least they recognize that, and they're trying to fix it. And I think he's going to bring some more, like I said, war and grit and shit back into WoW.